Well, new federal nutrition guidelines are changing the way Americans are advised to eat. But what do these new food pyramid recommendations really mean for families at the grocery store and at the dinner table? Joining us this afternoon is Dr. Matthew Foreman, a weight loss surgeon at ProMedica, so we can break things down a bit. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. So, all right, this new food pyramid almost looks like it's the reverse of what I grew up knowing.
Correct. Yeah, they did a little trick with the inverse pyramid this time,
Yeah.
and I think it was more of a visual to draw our attention to some of the changing recommendations, and namely more of a focus on protein.
Protein, protein, protein.
Got it. Yep.
That seems to be a word that I've been seeing all over social media and my algorithms, and it's hard to know, is there anything backing this? Why do we think increased protein is good for us?
Well, protein, you're right. I mean, what does that even mean? And it's really, protein is a string of amino acids, but we need that for muscle protein synthesis. And so when we extrapolate nutrition and kind of what does that mean for us on a daily basis, the more muscle that we can maintain and add as we age, the better. So the course of our lives, we just lose muscle as we get older. And so we want to do everything we can to combat that so that when I'm 80, I can still do all the same things that I want to do. And really the main way that we do that is by adequate protein intake. So when I look at these, it's been a huge, in my mind, positive, because protein's what's going to keep our muscle tissue around for a long time.
And we don't want to be breaking bones with a fall,
Correct.
things like that.
Right.
So how much protein then?
So, and there's a little bit of debate still. This
Yeah.
is the problem with nutrition, is it's not real cut and dry and black and white. But the old guidelines said 0.8 grams per kilogram. So roughly 0.3 grams per pound.
Okay.
The new guidelines, and actually in a lot of the metabolic health literature, we've been proponents of double the previous guidelines. So 1 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight a day.
Wow.
And so the new guidelines sort of fit with that. So 1.6 grams per kilogram, or double what the old recommendation was. So it's kind of a little bit more optimal for muscle health.
So if you're at 150 pounds, you want about 150 grams or more than that?
So it depends. Like in my world, if we're trying to get somebody to lose some weight, and let's just say for easy math, they're 200 pounds, but our goal is 150, then that's the number that we want to shoot at. So it's not actual body weight, it's more kind of ideal body weight.
Gotcha, okay. And this is where it's important to maybe get a scale.
Yeah.
Or really start looking at those nutrition labels, because there's a lot of us probably have no idea how much we're actually consuming every day.
Right, and that's where, as tedious as it is, food tracking sometimes, or macro tracking, is helpful. That can get very overwhelming. So like what I tell patients is, let's just start with your protein. If we have a calorie goal and a protein goal, the rest of that stuff sort of falls into place.
Okay.
But certainly it is hard, and it's very easy to underestimate how much protein we're actually getting.
Sure.
So a couple days a week where you're really meticulous about tracking your grams of protein, and then once you kind of get into a rhythm and you know what you got, then you can just cruise.
There's a lot of apps out there that help you do it,
Yep,
and
yep.
that kind of makes things, you could scan a barcode, all this,
Absolutely.
but you just have to make sure that you're actually eating the serving size.
Right. And one of the other pushes in the new guidelines is to gravitate towards more whole food sources, which is important too.
Yeah.
But it is hard to eat 150 grams of protein a day in whole foods.
Yeah.
So, a lot of my patients, and myself, I use a protein supplement, and so you just want to be careful about sourcing for that too, and you want to reach for really pure sources of protein.
Some of those maybe protein bars, they might have a lot of sugar, or
Correct.
all
Yes.
kinds of other stuff
Yep.
in there too.
You have to be very meticulous and become a very astute label reader.
Yeah. What else did this new pyramid set out?
So one of the other big pushes and areas of progress is the warning and sort of movement away from the ultra-processed foods. And this has been a problem, and increasingly so with the American diet, is very highly processed, high sugar, high fat, easy to eat foods. There was a
They
study.
taste really good.
They do.
Yeah.
55% of the average American's calories now come from ultra-processed foods.
Wow.
So it is a big problem, and the new guidelines really tried to address that and tried to, again, bring our focus back to eating whole foods instead of this ultra-processed stuff.
Got to cook some more, maybe.
100%.
How do we know? Because I think clearly we know if we are going to a fast food restaurant, we know that that's going to be processed. But how do we know the things that we're buying at the grocery store if they're ultra processed?
So somebody very much smarter than me said, beware of carbohydrates with boxes, bags, and barcodes.
Okay.
So, and that's obviously oversimplification.
Yeah.
The old adage is stay away from the inner aisles of the grocery store, and that there's really good stuff in the center of the grocery store too, but produce that is kind of usually around the outer edge, meat, eggs, dairy, eat real food. Another question that I've heard is, did God make it or did man make it? And
There
that
we
can
go.
kind of help distinguish between what's an ultra-processed food and what's not.
And what isn't? All
Yeah.
right. Well, this is I think just skimming the surface
It
here.
is.
I could talk to you about this forever,
Yeah.
but really interesting information. Thanks for breaking that down for us, because
Sure.
a lot of people probably saw it and went, huh?
Yeah,
So,
it's very confusing.
well, thank you very
Yep,
much.
thanks for having
Appreciate it.
me.
Yep.